Shelter the Song is a documentary currently in production. I am the director and producer of the film. The film is showing the devastating effect that the COVID-19 pandemic has had upon the live music industry.
The news was coming in quick, and people were calling me from DC saying that we're gonna be at my show saying, have you heard your show's canceled? And I was like, nobody's told me yet, you know, because we didn't know, but like 930 Club was announcing shutdown, all this stuff. So it was basically a scramble to figure out what was gonna happen that weekend, because I had 4 gigs the weekend the world shut down, traveling, flying from gig to gig. And just very rapidly, it just all, and some of my people were already on the East Coast ready for the gigs that were getting canceled, and I was calling them being like, hey, people in DC are telling me everything's shutting down and, you know, our gig's gonna be canceled. They're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you should probably call. So then it was just like, yeah, coming in from all angles, like, you know, tour managers were not getting in the news right away, people in town had the insight, it was just a whole, just bottom just completely dropped out like that, you know.
The reason why I decided to make this film was because as a musician myself, I really saw the devastating impacts the COVID pandemic had on my fellow musicians and my personal band as well. I also know the struggle that musicians go through in order to perform their songs, from practicing, traveling, showing up early, and really often not getting paid what they're due.
I think a lot of people don't really understand how much musicians are exploited in this business. You know, the entertainment business is a tough business to be in already. But you know, the musician, the like band sideline musician guy or gal, usually is the last person on the totem pole. So you know, there's a lot of exploitation going on, and a lot of times, especially when you're starting out, you're not getting paid very well. I don't want to call out any names particularly, but there's a lot of internationally touring acts that don't pay their musicians well at all. And there's not a lot of respect in the industry for musical talent and what we're bringing to the table. Because if it weren't for us, there wouldn't be any music. You know, yeah, you can have a venue, yeah, you can have a stage somewhere, yeah, you can have an artist, but without the musicians, there ain't no music. What are you watching? You know, I can watch a damn thing on TV. You know, people don't want to spend $50 for one day of watching something on TV like that, you know? So, you know, yeah, a lot of, even though you go to a show and like you're spending 40, 50, 60 bucks on a show, that money doesn't necessarily end up in the musician's pocket. You know, it's tough to be a musician, to be a touring musician, and you know, it takes time to really become savvy about your own self-worth and what you're bringing to the table, and to be confident to demand that worth in a monetary value, you know. So, but yeah, there's a lot of, you know, they don't call it a struggling musician for nothing. Like it's for real. Like a lot of us are struggling even without COVID.
The COVID-19 pandemic dragged on far longer than was expected. When everything got canceled, musicians were like, okay, it's gonna be a few weeks, months, we won't be able to play. Suddenly, a year and a half goes by. No shows, no festivals, no international tours yet to even be booked as of the point of filming in May.
All we do each year is try and like get to better shows and get to play with other bands that we've been wanting to play with, and we've been doing this for so long. And that first in March when they canceled South by was one of our best kind of lineups that we had prepped for South by. So we were our morale was just like so depleted that we didn't get to play those shows and execute those with those bands that we had been wanting to play with and prepping for and promoting and marketing and photo shoots and releasing a record just around that time to make it all worthwhile. And so it felt like climbing up a staircase and then, you know, falling far down like it was for everybody. And that's just on the perspective of music. There's like so many angles that you can look at with how shitty COVID was. And for one, the morale that we even try and keep up on regular days, on regular years of music playing. was even harder.
We were in the studio actually just before lockdown went into effect, and then all of a sudden, one by one, shows started getting canceled, and we're like, that's not good, because music is our life. We do music full time. We count on touring to be our most of our income, basically. So getting everything canceled was kind of a blow, and so all of a sudden we didn't have any income coming in besides, like, you know, kind of shitty royalties from Spotify and things like that.
Concerts and festivals everywhere were canceled. Independent venues are closing, or at least on the brink of being closed, going into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
We're racking up average costs across the city from venue to venue from, you know, $18K to $35K a month on the lower end. In California, I think, you know, we're looking closer to $125K per month.
For venues, like, okay, so we're gonna open back up, but now we have a shitload of debt. Now our small margin business those margins are being cut into by debt and back rent and whatever other expenses that we have. And I think you're really gonna see a real squeeze in like 6 to 8 months when, you know, these like rent protection laws expire and landlords are like, hey, like, give me my money. So it's nerve-wracking, to say the least.
Music is so important to people for so many reasons. And I wanted to explore this more as I was making this film. So I interviewed many people about how they felt, and I got a lot of really interesting responses.
You know, you hear people say music is the soundtrack to people's lives. So there's like a song probably for most every mood that we experience and different moods that we go through. There's probably some type of music that, you know, resonates with us or that we can relate to, that we can listen to. So with that being said, it means that music is kind of ingrained into our psyche, and it helps us get through things, and it helps us transition through different stages and cycles of our lives, and it's a very important component. A lot of times musicians don't get the respect or credit that they deserve, but they really do help us get through times. Think about, you know, whenever you're like lonely and you're in a city where there's a lot of like small little you know, venues or taverns to go to, and you go there and you hear independent artists play and you just feel a lot better. So, you know, there's something about the instruments, there's something about the energy that comes out from that music that helps us to process our emotions and release that. So it's a really healing thing.
Musicians have been around taking care of people through every disaster, on battlefields, at home, during the pandemic. The Italians are standing on their balconies singing. They have nothing else. I mean, when it all comes down to it, it's the arts that shows that we're humans, humanity, the humanity of man and womankind.
Even though the pandemic had some devastating effects on the industry, I found a lot of silver linings because of it as well.
First of all, I mean, just as a bassist, I carry a very large instrument around the city. And you don't really realize how big New York is until you try to like go from point A to point B. And you realize like, oh, an hour commute is kind of like a normal thing, an hour on the train. So just for me carrying the bass up and down the subway stairs, like, you know, starting off my day in Harlem and then like having to go to Brooklyn and then having to go to Queens and then having to go to Upper East Side and then go back to Harlem and then like end your day in the West Village, and it's like you've been out of the house for 18 hours. You have like 2 or 3 gigs a day in a rehearsal and maybe like a private student in between, and like none of it was from home. So everything is like you have to go somewhere. And just that, I don't think I realized how much energy that actually took until like I'd stopped doing it and then started doing it again, and it was like, oh wow, this is a lot. Wow. We really had this like crazy endurance as New Yorkers, as musicians in New York, of like how we go from place to place and go about our day. A vast majority of people that I have talked to, especially in New York, were just like, wow, I didn't realize how much I needed a break until I was forced to take a break. And I realized all these things about my living space that I was like, oh wait, there's no natural light in my living space whatsoever. Like how did I do this for 8 years? This is crazy. Also cooking for yourself, like having time to like do your skincare routine. All of a sudden, like my face looked so much like I was sleeping. I guess after the first 2 months of like sleepless anxiety nights, by the 3rd month I was like, all right, I'm getting like 8 hours. This is cool.
I can't say everything was taken away. No one was taking away my freedom to create at home, you know, and maybe having downtime, and so much downtime to really sit and reflect and observe the world and think how deeply, even more deeply about our societal constructs and everything, although overwhelming, produce a lot of art, you know? And I think people forget that art is usually made from trauma or pain. You know, jazz music comes from the plight of Black people in America. That's how we got jazz, you know? Whether you're using your art to express what you want to see or what you're actually feeling in that moment when you're really vulnerable and just saying exactly what's on your mind, it's still being created from trying to process human trauma and emotion and make some kind of semblance in it into words, you know, for yourself. And then as you grow, that's for other people too, you know? But it really, I asked myself a serious question at the very beginning. Who am I without touring? Who am I without my whole life that I've had for the last 10 years? Well, who am I as a person? And luckily I got to the same conclusion that I was at before. I make art, you know? I create whatever I'm passionate about, and whether that's music or art or helping someone else with their own plan and their dreams, and creating something from nothing is what I do. So once I kind of got past that, like, oh my God, everything is over, I flipped my perspective to what a unique opportunity to create the world to go back and to create the world in a more sustainable, better way that isn't full of greed and capital, you know, full capitalism, capitalizing on artists, and, you know, what does that world look like? And I think that because we're facing such uncertainty, or, you know, things, we don't know what's normal, what's not normal, how do we return to normal? I hope we don't return to normal, because normal was pretty fucked up.
As the film moved forward, I investigated how to solve the problems that I had been discussing with people and found some really creative ways of addressing them.
So NIVA is an organization that formed directly in response to the beginning of the pandemic and the need for resources and relief from the federal government to, you know, stop almost every independent venue from having to close its doors for good. And you know, our mission statement is to preserve and protect the independent music ecosystem. And our foundation's mission statement is to preserve and protect a competitive and transparent marketplace that serves a diverse, inclusive, and equitable community of artists, fans, and industry workers. Once we kind of knew that the advocacy effort was going to happen, the next question was, well, how can we, in addition to accessing this federal aid, in order to continue to make sure that independent venues and promoters and all of the people that support those groups are able to continue to exist, there's going to be an ongoing need for an association to play that role of advocate, you know, on the national stage and serve as a connection point for all the different people who are a part of the independent community. I kind of, you know, like many of the folks that are part of NIVA, you know, fell into or figured out how to be a concert promoter and a venue operator, you know, trial by error, There's no, you know, support system or mentor system to help me to, you know, learn how to do it in the best way possible for our community and the people around us. So I'm excited that there is going to be that for this next generation of folks who want to become leaders in our community, in the independent space. And that's kind of what we're focused on doing, you know, at this point, in addition to our advocacy efforts.
What we do with Uprise is we provide a platform for the artists in every city to be able to play it on a streaming radio station. And we give the community the ability to give feedback to the system, and the system will basically determine what the best songs are. It's a streaming radio station that's basically broken down into 3 tiers. There's the local tier, the statewide tier, and the national tier, where users can tune in at a local level, statewide level, and national level. And what happens is, as the songs play on the local station, listeners can decide whether or not they like the song or not like the song. The system will then take the best songs determined by the community and bring it to the statewide tier. And then so everyone in the statewide tier listens to the songs, they pick out their favorite songs as a whole, and then it brings to the national stage. And then now we have the best songs in independent music per genre on a national level. Uprise Radio will help artists in 2 ways. It'll help them primarily with exposure, and then help them with alternative revenue streams. One of the revenue streams is that we offer a profit sharing system where people will be able to make mixtapes with artists from all over the country, and if an artist is featured on that, they will make a certain percentage of the mix that gets sold. That's one way. Another way is we're looking at models where if they make it from state to national, or even from local to state, depending on how popular they are, we may offer them a contract to keep them on the platform, because we know they're making the good music. It probably wouldn't be anything to the level of what, you know, something Warner Brothers would offer, but it would be enough that would be sustainable, and really we'd just be, you know, giving them all the tools that they would need to be noticed or picked up by maybe a larger label that, you know, that would be able to pay them really, really well.
So I found it a unique opportunity to make a film that really spoke to the issues that I know so well. And I'm hoping that through it, I can help create a more vibrant and sustainable industry for musicians. Filming will be done soon, and I'm a little sad because I've had such a great time going around the country, filming, seeing great music, making amazing connections, spending time in such beautiful places, meeting so many great people. It's been an amazing ride, and it's not over. Now I'm beginning the grueling efforts of editing, where I will sort through all the beautiful footage and interviews I've taken and choose the best ones, unfortunately having to cut some out that I would never want to let go of. I have an incredible team working with me of creatives that see the future of this film, have faith in it, and are working for free. I am about to start a crowdfunding campaign so that I can pay these creative people to continue to work on the film. And that's really my next journey, finding funding, finding the money to make this film complete so that I can share the message, which I know is so important, about how people have been devastated by not having live music in their lives, how important live music is, and how we really need to create a safety net for independent venues, and how we really need to support musicians who work so hard in order to bring us what we love.
Check it, I do this for change. Real talk, I wanna change the world. I do this for change. I'ma send y'all out as my little minions to help me change it with me. Check it, I do this for change. And together, we gonna make the world a better place. I do this for change. Each one teach one, check it out. I do this for change. Not for minimum wage. They looking at me like they wanna be saved, but I don't know what to say. Want a trip to Sandro Pay, but when the work come, they gon' late. I do this for change, not for minimum wage. They looking at me like they wanna be saved, but I don't know what to say. Want a trip to Sandro Pay, but when the work come, they gon' late.